Dungeon Master's Diary, Entry 7. The party, now engaging in combat with the Fleshcaller, their two allies, Dotrin and Henra, captured within its several arms, now begin to lay assault to this abomination. Putting up a fight, it crawls along the walls, managing to grip a hold of a few faces, slashing at them with its horrid claws that tear into the flesh, causing serrated wounds to bleed. Eventually, the party break through, managing to overcome this creature's violent attacks, and fell it. Screeches as it turns to a pile of mush as Daron the alchemist throws a potent vial of acid to its face, in the form of his flail. Upon its defeat, the party get a sense of relief, as if the danger is long gone. But a voice echoes through their minds, the Dreadlord calling out to them with a angered call. Now all that lays on this floor is the treasury and the cage of madness. Heading to the treasury, the party uncover the vast wealth and stowed away treasures that the Dreadlord had, finding a slew of interesting items. For some, they uncover gems, pieces of artwork, magic items of renowned power. Yet some of them find some strange knick-knack items. A jar of cookies made of porcelain in the shape of a wormly grandmother whose head tilts back, unveiling an endless supply of butterscotch and raspberry cookies. Dotrin, delighted with this, begins shuffling them and shoving them down into Sir Lorcan's frog helm. Henra, on the other hand, was not so fortunate, finding only potion bottles, of which his attunement to his curiosities renders them mundane, turning them into bottles of ornate making into flavored water, some of which containing the toenails of giants. However, upon searching through, finds another knick-knack item. The use of it is potentially useful, especially in social interactions. Now the party, bags fit to burst, head out to the Cage of Madness, finding the tapestry that echoes maddening cries of laughter to be only a fake, a magic mouth spell dispelled by the artificer Daron. Unlocking the door that leads to the stairs above, Daron sends his familiar down the corridor that passes it, which leads to a single lever centered on its switch. There is an arrow that points up and an arrow that points down. Upon pushing the lever up, the doors of the Cage of Madness close, echoing a ear-bursting screech that deafens them. Upon realizing this, the familiar pulls it all the way to the bottom, sending a large spike through its form, disapparating it. The loss of life, as it were, frees the party from the cage, allowing them to head upstairs. Now, entering the 4th floor of Aen'Banshier, they find the rooms quiet. The grinding of gears behind the walls and floor still rattling through. And they uncover rooms that are eerily similar to each other. A stone dais, the center of the room. A throne adorned with a weapon to its side. And facing across, a single stone statue of a knight. Upon realizing it, Dojin picks up the weapon and sits upon the throne, and the stone statue approaches the dais. According to the legends, knights of old would be sentenced like this to the throne, awaiting their judgment. In the first room, Dojin followed the legends, breaking the weapon across his knee. The first knight, torn with grief, wields aloft its greatsword and plunges it through their own neck, revealing behind the stone facade a spear-like gemstone. In the rooms ahead, they uncover similar events, different weapons, different thrones, and different decor, each with a different knight. Dojin, now hearing every tale, upon looking at the portraits that shift and move with every decision, decides to knave the other two. The first one he had knaved simply fell to its knees and cried tears of stone. Yet the last one, known as Lord Boone, stood tall and drew its blade against him. So, the session was a bit of a, change of pace. The expectations that, the Fleshcaller would have been a piece of cake pretty much was. It does a lot of damage. The partner's like, oh, what's it doing? And it uses a bonus action and flagellates itself. If you're unfamiliar with what that means, it means it whips itself bloody. It's kind of a thing for more of a medieval thing. It's a religious situation where someone will harm themselves for the sins of others. However, the Fleshcaller gains a little bit of now it's dead, I suppose. It gains a damage boost to the bleeding damage it does. Now, to anyone that's new listening to this and has listened thus far, I incorporated another damage type called Bleed, which is just essentially what it says on the tin. It's a damage that not a lot of things are resistant to, except oozes and ghosts, etc. Now, the Fleshcaller does a lot of bleed damage. The weapon damage isn't as much as the bleed. Its main design was you would get a sense of it getting a pleasure out of watching something suffer like that. Its bite attack, not a lot of piercing damage, but its bleed damage as it drinks your life force and heals from it. That's a lot. It only managed to land one bite. Actually, it landed two. It landed one on, I believe it was Dotran, and the second one was on Sir Lorcan, who critically succeeded on his con save to reduce the bleeding damage. However, in this campaign, critically succeeding on a save versus an effect means you completely negate it. If you crit fail, you take double damage. And in doing so, the Fleshcaller got no benefit. The fight was something, the Henra definitely learned how he got captured. There was a bit of argument of how could he possibly be captured, because he can just teleport. It's like, well, try. He's like, oh, here's, and to quote the player, like, here's how I wouldn't be captured. He thundersteps, and he still remains in place, but he lets out a thunderous explosion. The reason is that when the Fleshcaller has a grip on you, you are dimension locked to that location. You can't teleport out of it. So you have to break free, or you have to do enough damage to it that it has to make a strength check versus the amount of damage you dealt to it, which is its DC. and it will just drop you. There was a lot of other things that the Fleshcaller didn't do that I really wish I had done. As in, it can extend its reach another 5 feet by tearing off one of its arms and grabbing its detached appendage and gripping a hold of a weapon and just swing with that. Or it could smother. It has these spikes jutting out of its forearm, or the inner forearm, and it would just squeeze and crush. It does have a few other abilities like torture, which if you're grappled, it will hold you in two hands and then just start snipping away at your flesh. It does a boatload of bleed damage. I believe it was about 10d8, plus a certain amount of necrotic damage. And yeah, I never got a chance to use it, which I'm glad, to be honest with you. Just having Zaxxos just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna stun this creature, bang, 5 minutes stun, no immediate save against it. Failed against the save. It's just like, yeah, it's stuck for 5 minutes. That's what kind of made me go, this might be a little bit easier than I anticipated. But yeah, that was pretty much the culmination. Daron loading up Willet's flail, given to him by Circum Willet, an old artificer that lived in Midfort in a library now and still working away. He's very old now. Eventually, it used to have just one head in it, and you could load a vial of whatever inside, but then went back a while ago, and it had an additional head attached to it. Now he just swings it, and it bursts these two large things against him. I was like, man, it's gonna hurt. And yeah, it killed it, overkilled it. In the party, we're trying to figure out how many immunities and resistances that the Fleshcaller had. It had quite a lot of them, actually. It had immunity to necrotic and cold damage. It was resistant to fire. Actually, it had an immunity to poison as well. It was resistant to lightning damage. It was not resistant to bleed, actually. Mostly because I got the pleasure out of doing so. It would be vulnerable if it really wanted to. But then, what would be the point? It would kind of be like, oh, it rolls 10d10 damage to flagellate itself, and then just double that dice. Kind of pointless. Doing potentially 200 damage max. I thought, nah, not doing that. Thing had over 1000 HP, and they just wiped it. Sir Larkin doing good chunks of that, about 300 plus damage a turn without action surging, so he has 3 attacks. Yeah, it was an interesting fight. Could have been a lot worse, could have been a little bit harder. But they eventually just kind of went, okay, we're gonna move on and just go to the treasury, loot this. And Doutrin getting that cookie jar was the bane of my existence. They have to roll to see what kind of cookies are in there. I've got a little D8 list. Could have been dark chocolate chip, could have been white chocolate chip, could have been edibles, could have been sugar cookies. What else was there? There's the butterscotch and raspberry ones, which was number 3. Number 1 was oatmeal and raisin. 2 was something I can't quite recall. But it was just an item that just sort of I randomly rolled for, because certain rolls that they did landed on items that I kind of went, it doesn't make sense for the Dreadlord to have. I'm going to just jump to a table I have and roll randomly on that. And they're not exactly amazing, they're just more ease of, a little ease of life sort of thing. but the player that plays Dotrin was like, yeah, Dotrin is just going to start shoving cookies into Sir Lorcan's helmet. I was like, okay, that's fine. Now Sir Lorcan is angry, and Dotrin refuses to help him and has basically bubbled his aura around Dotrin, so he gets no benefits. He is letting up. He's trying to see the humor in it, but you are essentially just being like, hey, I'm just going to fill your helmet full of crumbs until you can't see, you suffocate, or you get diabetes. Or you stab me and smite me with all of your wrath. And he would action surge and do it again. And he'd go from his highest spell slots to smite you and go down. And he crits very easily. But alas, I wasn't going to do that. There's a bit of spite going on between the two now. But I've sort of moved away from that. Henra getting the I think it's the Amulet of Cunning, or Amulet of Fox's Cunning, which allows him to have advantage on intimidation, persuasion, and deception checks, which is really nice for a sorcerer to have. Finding the Well of Worlds was an interesting thing. Just having an instant teleportation device that I get to randomly decide where it goes could be a great help. Also, the benefit is it doesn't work in the dungeon, so they would just kind of like portal and just sort of jump through and just start falling rapidly through this portal until their body just broke. But yeah. I was hoping to have a few more things for that session, but they did make their way into the 4th floor, which is on the map that I sort of wrote up. It's called the Floor of Trials, and it's kind of what it says in the box, you know. They do find that they have to judge these legends of Feywild history. There's about 3 they've done so far. There's 2 to go. And yeah, they wandered into one of the rooms, which was a room with mold and fungus growing all over it. And that the sudden assumption is that it's about the festering queen who ruled over the Gloaming Court for a while, and they just sort of decided, okay, we're gonna judge this being. So they sat on the throne, picked up the weapon, told it to come forward, and they realized that they had no idea who they were judging, if they did anything good, did anything bad. Now, they just sort of went, okay, we'll come back to this, put the blade away, ventured off to the next room, where they found the room where Lord Boone was, Lord Boone of Caradin was. And Lord Boone, not a good person. They went, okay, knavehood, straight away. Upon hearing the tale, retold by Sir Lorcan, who knew Lord Boone of Caradin very long ago. In doing so, of knaving Lord Boone, the statue automatically sort of comes to attention and initiates a combat situation. I think the party's kind of onto the ball with it. The paladins have disabled their aura, so there's no benefits, there's no healing, there's nothing. And they can choose to intervene if they want to. They don't know the consequences of doing such a thing, if it's honourable, if it's not. And I'm just curious to know what their mindset will be. But I want to see how it plays out. Probably going to be running an additional session as we have been the past couple of weeks, and so I've had to make 2 videos of this a week, pretty much. It's usually only one. I'm just hoping that when the dust settles after this combat, it's all good. But until then, I have to sort of assume that the party are not going to intervene, so I'm going to have to make sure that the statue hasn't got an insane amount of damage, which I think it kind of does at the moment. I do need to work on it. It was designed to be fought by several people, just in case. But I'm really interested to see how they feel at the end of this floor, which is quite a small floor, and it's all about this. It's just designed to be this way. There's traps, yes, but all the rooms are filled with this situation. And they're thinking, oh, surely there's a throne room. I'm like, yeah, there is. Every single room is a throne room, essentially. But they will find out that the Dreadlord is basically watching them. Pretty much reflected by the fact that the players know I was recording every decision they made. So it's clear to them that the Dreadlord is aware of what they're doing, and the portraits of the knights that they have been finding are warping into what decision happened. Usually showing the final moments, like the knight decapitating themselves, the second one drowning themselves, and they haven't seen Lord Boone's one yet. They did find the portrait, they just haven't found the outcome yet. So it should be interesting. I think it's really gonna pay off, I feel. And it is telling a story. They're kind of missing it a little bit, but it will be alright in the end. It will all make sense. And I can't wait for them to be like, either called it, didn't expect that, or why did you do this? So, here's hoping. But that is for the next session. And until next time, as always, stay safe out there, adventurers.